The 1,000-year Reich was indeed going to provide beautiful ruins, but much sooner than Speer had foreseen. We left the elegant cafe for a little stroll. Rolf von Eppen was in a nostalgic mood. He took me to the wooded neighborhood above the station where Globocnik had his villa, requisitioned from a certain Angelo Ara, at number 34 in the Via Romagna, a beautiful Art Deco residence that globiously ingenious, connected by underground passageways to the courthouse buildings where he had his offices. It reminded me of his house in Lublin, in Poland, just as strategically situated, next to the SS quarters, the occupation administration, and the HQ of Axiom Reinhardt, a villa with 2 floors and a garden, just like the one in Trieste. Lublin the Red was prettily paved. A commercial artery led to the monumental gate to the old city, cut in half by the Nazis to install the ghetto there. The dark little streets were not reassuring at night. A little lower down was the castle, a big, rather austere barracks. I was there in winter, an icy, snowy winter that had no reason to envy the winter of 1943 where temperature is concerned. In the center of Lublin, not many things had changed. I was staying at the Grand Hotel, transformed during the war into a Deutsches Haus, with an officer's mess. Stangl had slept there with his wife when she had come from Austria to visit him. It had become a giant hotel with communist rooms, gray wall-to-wall carpeting and formica cabinets. There were 2 splendid bars. One looked out onto the square with a piano and high ceilings. The other was cozier, more intimate, the former library of the Deutsches Haus. In the morning I had taken Stangel's road to Sobibor, near the Ukrainian border. Miles and miles of magnificent forests under snow, flat forests without a hill in sight, so smooth you could have slid to Moscow without realizing it. Not a mountain the side of the Urals, birch trees to the heart's content. Birch trees and a few firs. There were not many cars, mostly pedestrians who walked by the side of the road to get to the nearest bus stop at the outskirts of villages, and then nothing else, the forest. I had passed the railroad, which told me I was headed in the right direction. The heat turned up high in the car, the silence and the noise of the engine, the noise of the engine of the Russian tank that Stangl and Bauer had brought from Lvov. The malfunctioning diesel engine propelled black gases into the little brick room at the end of the open-air corridor bordered with thick hedges, made of branches stuck in the barbed wire. The naked Jews ran with their feet in the snow in the winter. It wasn't necessary to whip them much. The cold whipped them well enough. The cold and the snow are effective. The shouts, the door, the silence, and the sound of the engine. In the interminable straight line, I suddenly see a young woman in a black coat standing by the road, alone at the edge of the trees. I must have been dreaming. No, she is really there in the rearview mirror. What is she doing motionless by the side of the road in her coat? A little black shoulder bag, 1,000 miles away from any inhabited land. I hesitate to make a U-turn. She must be waiting for the bus, next to trees collapsing beneath the snow. There is nothing here. No village, no farm, no house. Just a woman in the middle of the cold, the snow, and the dead Jews. Is she waiting for me? A reincarnation, a ghost. Strange omen. I don't do anything. Silence and fear. Like many others, I do nothing. I don't turn my car around. A sign indicates the train station of Sobibor on the right. A snowy path in a dense wood. My wheels spin at times. There are some blankets of fog. I am approaching the terminus, then the narrow gauge line. Stangel's house where he drank vodka with comrades whom he detested, the train station, the important little camp where, thanks to German meticulousness, hundreds of thousands of bodies were processed, tons of flesh among the birch trees. There it is, the terminus is approaching. The end of the line, there is nothing. A green cabin, the museum closed in winter. I park the car against a heap of snow. Behind me, railroad workers are sending off a train loaded with logs. Nothing changes. They're laughing because I got covered in snow, next to a memorial that no one visits. Before, they laughed because strangers came to die in these lands made for hunting deer, for wood, for snow, but not for running naked towards a tank engine started by a red-faced German. The Poles have a good laugh when faced with disaster. They're used to it. They have been working here for generations. I've come to see, so I get out of the car, but I know that the trees aren't going to speak. I sink into the whiteness up to my ankles. I go forward into the forest. A wide lane leads to a clearing where there is a great dome of silence, the eastern terminus. Here end the railways that lead from Salonika, Westerbork, Ternopil to Riesenstadt, Paris, from so many cities and villages. The only traces are those left by the does and birds in the snow. There is nothing but the unimaginable and the tallness of the trunks. The wind blows gently, the sky is opaque. I wander around for a while in the clearing without trying to determine exactly where the buildings were, the ditches, the bodies. My brain is white as linen, white as virgin skin. I push the car, manage to make a U-turn, and start off again for Lublin. The young woman wasn't waiting anymore in the middle of a deserted forest. Back at the Grand Hotel, I'm stone cold, frozen stiff. I sat down in a club chair in the immense bar, wondering what Stonewall the gardener drank when he was here with his wife. The night was pitch black. Outside, vehicles were skidding on the melted snow turned muddy. I was very far away, very far. I ordered a tea in an immense and glacial solitude. A blind man came in, accompanied by an old lady. She sat him down at the piano, a black, ancient-looking baby grand. He said a few words and started up a ballad by Chopin. The instrument was out of tune, sounded off-key. I quietly finished my tea, determined to brave the cold and the snow, to buy myself a bottle of vodka in the closest supermarket and confront the long Polish night. The blind man attacked my way in a particularly mawkish tempo. A sign said for the blind and crippled next to a wicker basket. I left him all my change. In Trieste, there's no pianist in the luxurious restaurant where Ralph the banker took me. He's talking to me about Globochnik, the snake. I don't dare ask him if Himmler's man was his mother's lover. Probably not. Globus, the boar, must not have been tempting to Austrian nobility, or vice versa. Ralph Cavriani van Eppon, the nostalgic, has been keeping us informed about the covert accounts of his clients for years. Companies, various mafias, facades for suspicious activities, out of philanthropy, or almost. And I suspect him of acting in the same way with a number of European agencies, which explains why his business is prospering and out of the law's reach. Rolf, the son of the Duchess, who was slumming it with champagne with the heads of the Adriatisches Küstenland early in 1945, who had the idea first, back then? Kalterweg, Rosner, or Globochnik with swine? We'll never know. Madame la Duchesse, maybe. Maybe the mother of Rolf the cynic asked the same question as Stéphanie, the great question with no answer. Stéphanie is one of his former girlfriends. The great question with no answer, as the soldiers in black uniforms told them about their feats of arms. What is it like to kill a man? Lobos hooted outright with laughter. He answered, "You're about to see, madame, after you." And all the guests, blind drunk, thought it was an excellent idea. A demonstration. The women hitched up the bras on their breasts, rearranged their priest dresses to head for the cellar, where the 10 Slovenians were piled up behind respectable iron bars. The prisoners saw the charming company coming down towards them without understanding, pausing at the bottom of the steps, a meter away from the grill. They got up. Rosener took out his P-38, Kalterweg too. The panic-stricken resistance huddled against the walls like insects. Rosener said, "Who wants to begin?" And a very drunk lady answered, Me. Rosener took her by the waist, put the weapon in her hand. Feeling her up a little, they went over to the bars. Rosener guided her on. She saw a shadow in the right corner. She pulled the trigger. The shot resounded. She pulled the trigger. The shot resounded under the beautiful vault. The wounded Slovenian shouted and collapsed. The audience cried, "Bravo, bravo, encore!" And the 4 pieces belonging to the SS present were emptied onto the poor guys like the bottles of champagne before. Everyone wanted to try their hand at death. The explosions vibrated in the powder-heavy air. The blood splattered the whitewashed walls. The women quivered with fear and pleasure, sobered up fast by the adrenaline. The dying men twisted onto the corpses of their companions. The guests' ears whistled in the great silence that always follows massacres. Everyone went back upstairs without saying a word. I think I better stop there.
First ask you how it is that you came to Zone, because we found it independently of each other, I guess. So how is it that you You discovered it.
Yeah.